Welcome to Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control, helping you navigate the roadways of life, business, and everything in between.
Hey guys, it's Kevin Davis from Detailer's Roadmap Cruise Control Podcast. This is episode number 3. I am here with Alex Brown, who is a productivity coach and efficiency scheduling expert, which, if you know anything about me, is right up my alley and literally my entire life. So this will be a great conversation. So welcome, Alex. Thanks for coming on board.
Thank you for having me.
I think what I'd just like for you to do is kind of give me your background, give me a little bit of bio. I'd like to get to know you a little bit, and then we can get into kind of, some of the more productivity, efficiency, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so my background, I've actually been working in technology for the past 5.5 years or so. And kind of got this hankering, this idea, right? I needed a way to manage my time a little bit better. I looked at what was out there, and I just couldn't find something that checked all the boxes that I wanted to check. So I started actually building my own productivity application, right? Something that would give me everything that I need. That was called Daymaster. So kind of working through it as a side project for a long time, and never really getting to a point where I wanted to, and continuing to succeed at work, moving ahead at work up to the chain in technology. And then, I had a gut feeling. I'm like, this is the time to go. This is the time to do it. And I was just too comfortable, right? Work, nice paycheck, fat paycheck. And it's like, no, I'm just going to stick around for a little bit longer. So.
And what do you do in technology? Are you programming or?
So I've done a little bit of everything. I've done management. I've done analysis. I've done a little bit of development too. Okay. So kind of like a broad spectrum, and something that I found out that I was really good at working at Empower Retirement.
Oh, okay. Are you doing the back end stuff yourself, or do you bring on some development? I have a web development, app development firm that I've had since early days of, I'm older. Yeah. So back 2000s, early 2000s. So and we've done a couple of apps and all that kind of stuff, but it's so much, I wouldn't say easier, but the tools are better than they are now. Are you doing the back end yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. So that's part of it, right? Like trying to figure out what this thing is. You got an idea, and you add a little bit over here, you take a little bit away over there. And but no, I've been doing it all myself, and I'm just about there, right? I got this idea. I finally honed in on the process and exactly what it is. So earlier this year, my gut told me again, it's time to go. So I pulled the trigger, and here we go. So
nice.
Yeah.
And so Daymaster it's just a productivity app that leads you through better productivity management, goal setting. What does it kind of give me the?
So the way that I like to approach things is process oriented, right?
I'm all for that.
Yeah, system analyst, right? That was what I've done for a long time. So trying to look at life as a process, you know what I mean? So the first thing you do in Daymaster is you define what your best life looks like, right? So you got a lot of different sectors of life. It's not just your career. It's not just your relationship, right? You kind of got to cover the broad spectrum of everything. What do I really want? That's the key question I like to hone in on. What do I want? And if you can start kind of defining what you want, step 2 would be, now you got to define some specific goals, to start executing and reaching that best life. And then kind of phase 3 of that is you need to plan out each day to make sure you're finding that time to execute on your goals to reach your best life, right? The rest of your life doesn't stop just because you have a goal. You got to make time, you got to fight for it.
Right.
And you got to remain organized. So.
Right. And how would that fit in? I'm sure you're familiar with Atomic Habits.
Yes.
And his approach, which is more of it's more developing habits and setting goals and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Is that kind of along the same lines?
Well, so much of your behavior is repeated, right? So one of the key things of the Daymaster experience is journaling. I don't know if you journal at all, but
I've tried multiple times. I have a hard time with journaling because by the time, I'm one of those guys that is either 100 miles an hour or asleep.
I can relate to that.
So when I try to do a little bit of journaling, I usually do it more of a mental list. So I do, I do more of just a basic gratitude thing first thing in the morning.
Absolutely.
And at the end of the day, one of the things I picked up on, and I'm trying to remember who I picked it up on, is some podcast I was listening to, but he was talking about the importance of celebrating the wins of the day. And so trying to go back through, and that's where if you set your goals correctly, and maybe this is something you can talk to, but if you set your goals correctly of less of I call them have tos versus get tos.
Sure.
And for most of us, it's have to's dominate our lives.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think in this case, I try to, at the end of the day, I try to set or at the beginning of the day, set those goals so that it's more of a, like, these are things that in general I want to accomplish, but not necessarily just a laundry list, right?
Yes.
Because that's not really it's not necessarily a win that you fixed your printer or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right? But it may be a win that you took a step forward on a particular project that you're doing. Like in my case, I've got several projects and a bunch of brands. So it may be something in particular, like implementing a social media tool or something like that.
Yeah. So the way that I like to approach things, there's something called timeboxing.
Okay.
Familiar with that?
I'm not.
All right, so timeboxing is just allocating a dedicated amount of time to one task. Right. So when I plan out my day, I'm actually setting these blocks of time to these specific tasks, right? So much is based on, getting things done. But if you start off with one thing that goes off the rails, your day is absolutely screwed, Like, I wanted to get this done. I started at 8. All of a sudden it's 10:30. I'm almost there. It's 11:30. It's 12:30. And now it's like, man. And then the rest of my plan is shot. So I'm a huge believer in time boxing. So rather than saying, this is everything I have to get done, here's where I'm going to allocate my time today, right? So from, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, that's what I found is kind of the sweet spot.
Okay.
30 minutes, 45 minutes to these specific tasks that you want to get done. Now, obviously, if you have a deadline, you got to grind it out, right? You got to get things done. But if you're planning really well in advance, ideally, you're breaking that up and you're hacking away at it so that you're not getting everything at the very end and getting overwhelmed, So time boxing.
I assume that with time boxing, I'm sure there's research that would talk about productivity in boxing those times in small segments versus trying to get it, because we talk about, I'm normally not in the office, but being in the office this week, I work out of my house and usually do that just naturally. So I'll work on multiple things. But you get around 3 or 4 or whatever, and everybody's kind of starting to get fried, loopy, and all that because you've kind of been doing the same thing all day,
Sure.
And so I would assume that there's some decent research on the productivity part of that.
Oh, absolutely. So just doing that, one is just the clarity too, right? If you can break these things down into these small digestible pieces, you don't get lost. And it's challenging to do. It's something that, you got to get used to it. But, even when I'm building my website, it's like, hey, if I can dedicate 30 minutes just to get this, one small user form working, something like that. Or even, and you gotta plan out other pieces of your day too. Like I'm a avid fitness guy, right? I like to work out at least 3, 4, 5 times a week.
Me too.
So you got to be able to say, hey, 30 minutes here, an hour there, whatever it is. But just staying organized and having that plan, right? I'm a huge believer in having the plan.
Yeah, we do it. So with this particular industry, detailing is very service oriented and it's project oriented, but those projects may last 3 to 4 hours, but I think there probably is a natural delineation in that process because let's say that and I know you're not a detailer, but if you're polishing paint, for example, you've got some several prep steps. They do what's called a test spot if you're polishing. So you kind of lay out and say, okay, this is the approach that I'm going to take to correct the paint. Then you've got correction and cleanup and all that. And each one of those may take a little bit of time, but even if so someone listening to this may say, dude, this takes like 5 hours for me to do this project. Well, you're not doing the whole car at one time. So if you break that up and you say, oh, okay, I'm going to do the front end or the hood and the doors and all that, and you can is that kind of an approach that you could take when you're doing because with us, like if we're in the office working on the computer, it's much easier than if you're doing an actual physical application to that.
Yeah, great question. Just breaking it into the component parts, right? You just really need to define what do I want to get done right now. And if you can, through the detailing process, say, hey, there's 3 major steps. I'm going to dedicate 90 minutes to step 1, the prep, or 15 minutes or whatever that is, and so on and so forth. The other thing that's really, really great with time boxing is usually once your box is done, you don't like jump right into the next one. You got like a little 5-minute break there to let your mind reset. One of the things is if you stay on something too long, you actually feel that mental drain, you know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm pushing, but I'm not really getting anywhere anymore. Yeah. So, having that quick 5-minute refresh, 10-minute refresh, whatever it might be, that helps keep your day on track, right? Where you're working, resting, just to stay fresh, through 8, 9, 10 hours, whatever it might be.
And do you find that switching, So a lot of times in detailing, for example, we talk about, working on your business, not in your business. Like, because it's very tempting to be more of a technician in the industry, which is basically you're just the one doing all the work and never actually working on your business.
Yeah.
So it seems like it would be helpful to divert your energies to similar things, but not the same thing. So if you've got some business activities to do and polishing, or maybe, take it and do a 30-minute block of something else. I don't know if that's something that's helpful.
I would agree, right? Anytime you get stuck in kind of one task all day, even if you're breaking it into pieces, right? Like, I mean, that part of your mind is just wearing down over time, right? Your ability to make decisions. So having that variety keeps things fresh too. Another key part of anything is just the prioritization, right? When you talk about trying to manage your business versus, being the technician, what's the most important thing that you can do right now, right? And trying to prioritize and make sure that those tasks are what you're tackling first, versus I'm getting lost in this low value activity for, the early morning and my day is shot, So being able to prioritize what you want to work on is really, really important.
And how do you typically advise people to do the priorities? I mean, so one of the things I do with some of I have the Maxed Out Man stuff, which is a kind of a, overall success related thing, is redefining what success looks like from a life standpoint. Yeah. Which is, family, fitness, health, which I think both of us are fitness guys. Those are often the last, eating right, having good health, strong relationships, whether it be, friends and family. Obviously for me, you've got faith and different things that you want to do, but how do you advise people to kind of work through? Because most of the time, and I think all of us, especially if you're a small business owner, you tend to focus on work,
absolutely.
Right? And I think as guys, it's very driven. A lot of us are very driven. It can be that way. Obviously, women have that same drive, but I think we beat ourselves up a lot,
for sure,
as well. So, how do you kind of talk through people on that kind of thing, setting the right priorities?
I mean, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to give you a quick story, right?
Tell me the long version.
So I've been working with a coach for a long time too, because, when COVID hit, right, I talked about kind of ready to take that plunge, not being able to do it, maybe getting a little scared, a little comfortable. My priority kind of got lost a little bit, right? So I'm like trying to grind it out on this application, do a full-time job. My wife is going through a tough time at that point. I find out my son has autism, it's like there's a hurricane of stuff going on there. And, for me, realizing, hey, I'm dedicating all of my time over here to, my business, trying to get this off the ground, my full-time job. I mean, there's just not a lot left of me for everything else. Yeah. So, you got to try to maintain balance. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned, right? So let's say, your business is killing it, but the rest of your life sucks. You're not going to be happy. You know what I mean? Your relationship's struggling, your family life struggling, your social life struggling. So having that balance and being able to draw those clear lines is absolutely important, as to say, this is when work ends and this is where family life starts. That's where having that plan is always so important, right? I'm actually making time for my family, right? Writing it down, family dinner time, whatever that might be, making that time for your friends. But in terms of prioritization, right, if you're dealing with your business, it's what is giving me the most value, right? Where is my time worth the most? That's where I need to be putting that. But then you also got to bounce that up against, like I said, your best life, all these different sectors. What's missing, right? Actually, one of the cool things in Daymaster is you actually assign kind of a rating to each one of the sectors, right? So just starting off, right, you'd go through and just add a rating, and you actually get to see this radar chart of what your life looks like right now. And, if one spot is low, right, you have a clear, visible sign that, hey, this is something I got to work on. You know what I mean? Yeah. But ultimately, it's up to the individual to define their priorities, right? Nobody can tell you what your priorities are. It's up to you to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think so many people, they're, especially in Western culture, we're so focused on the work aspect of it. And I'm a little older, I'm 50, but earlier in my career, I was complete workaholic. Like I traveled 6 days a week, missed the first 6 months of my firstborn's life for the most part. And then it's all of a sudden I was like, and my wife helped because she was like, do you really want to have a marriage and family? Because if you do, you need to change things.
Yeah.
So they do that. And then I changed my focus completely on being, business and money and work is part of what helps me build a life.
For sure.
It's not the life.
Yes.
And I think so many times that it's something that, without those priorities and that's interesting that, for you having that priority it's not a choice. If your son is on the spectrum, you now have, and I've got a lot of friends that have kids that are on the spectrum, and it's like, it's a blessing. It can look like a curse because it's a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge, but it really, what they've explained is it can be a huge blessing because it now really defines, and you can, if you'd like to, I'd love for you to speak to this, but we all say kids are important, right?
Yes.
And need our care and need our time and all that. But like with a child on the spectrum, especially depending on where they fall, it's a no-brainer. Like they do require care and in some cases for the long haul.
Yeah, so one of the biggest lessons, right, like you said, that there's always another challenge. So, you don't maybe see it when it's hitting you there, but then you look back and you say, wow, that was actually a great learning opportunity, right?
Right.
Reflection is huge. But, I remember, we found out he was probably 2 or 3 and just very difficult times, right? So, kids get angry, they get frustrated, they throw a tantrum. Like he's on like level 10, we went to Cabela's one day to visit Santa, and he's throwing himself on the ground and he's hurting himself and just.
Well, and your first reaction probably is like, hey, what, like this is not normal behavior.
Yeah, stop. Yeah, please stop, and everybody's looking at you and whatever else. And I just remember taking him home that day, and he was just he could not get down from this angry state, and just climbing on top of him, kind of holding him down so he couldn't thrash, but in like a very loving and compassionate way, until he could wind himself down. And one of the things that taught me was just that patience, right?
Yeah.
Patience is so important that you can't get to the finish line today, right?
Right.
And just making each day count is so important, right? And that one makes me a little emotional. That was a really tough day. So.
And so assuming now you get to help him to continue to learn and figure out emotional management, and obviously there's some different challenges, but which we teach our kids anyway, whether they're having those challenges or not. But I think it seems like that's a life lesson for all of us, though, right? Like I said, it can be a blessing because in your case, like I'm sure that affects your thought process and because you have to react differently automatically.
Yes.
And do you carry that into your own kind of mentality and ability to deal with things and all that?
It's something you can definitely draw on, right? Like it gives you such good perspective, right? Like, hey, if I can tackle this, there's probably a lot of things that I can tackle, right?
Yeah.
But even going back to, like you said, the learning and growth, one of the goals I set for myself, goals don't have to be this monster thing that, this monster undertaking. It was just teaching him how to tie his shoes. And he's got no patience, ADHD, autism, he's got no patience, but, just setting that and doing that time boxing, right? Hey, we're going to work on this for 10 minutes a day until you get it, right? This one really doesn't have a deadline. So probably took about 3.5 weeks of grinding it out, and he's fighting with me the whole time, but we eventually got it. So it's so rewarding.
Oh man. Yeah. And that time boxing gives him those parameters.
Yeah. He can't go for 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I usually set it for 10, and it ended up being probably 6 or 7, before he's done, which is fine. But just having it on the calendar, writing it down, committing to it, executing.
Which is what we all need to do, right? And that's what you're saying. Those time boxes may be 30 minutes, they may be 45, maybe an hour or whatever. I know you're saying 30 to 45 is kind of that sweet spot. And it's funny how you can take something that seems very unrelated and apply that to pretty much everything that we do.
Pretty much anything and everything.
I'm interested to know, so tell me about multitasking. because I'm assuming that you're on the same page with me that multitasking is a lie.
It is.
There's really no such thing as multitasking.
Yeah.
And as someone that is, considers I'm fairly high functional. Mm-hmm. And my wife always says, well, you can multitask. And I'm like, no, I kind of have multiple personalities, so I have to keep this one busy.
Yeah.
But talk to me about multitasking, because I think that's educational for me to kind of hear what other people think about it.
So your brain can really only focus on one thing at a time. I think there are a few people, I've read studies that it's like 5% of people can effectively multitask. But I mean, anytime you're working on something, if you are not giving that your full focus, like what kind of quality are you getting by doing that? So let's say I'm trying to do two things at once and I'm doing kind of a crappy job on both of those. What are you gaining versus doing a good job, putting your focus here, checking this box, moving it on? One of the other cool things I put into Daymaster was having rules, right?
Yeah.
So having rules are kind of your boundaries, right? And you define what your rules are, but one of the ones that I have, which I'm not always perfect at, but I only work on one thing at a time.
Okay.
That's one of my rules that I have written down. And that's just a great way to say, hey, I'm gonna work on this. I'm gonna stay disciplined and focused, and then I'm gonna move on. But multitasking, I think there maybe are a few people that can do it, but usually it's just a loss of quality, a loss of focus, and some overwhelm.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
I was reading about special operators. Mm-hmm. Like our special forces and Navy SEALs and all those. And typically they kind of did this brain study on these guys, and they fall within that.
Yeah.
To where they actually do have the ability to do multitasking at that level. And they have this thing where they can turn their brains on and off.
Yeah.
Like, so if they get an hour of sleep while they're deploying to some location or whatever, their brain can function on that.
And that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we need them, and that's why they do what they do. Yeah. But like for most of us, I don't think I tend to lean towards that a little bit, but I'm not nearly at that level. And one of the big things I struggle with is, the lie of multitasking.
Yeah.
And really focusing. So I'll be able to take some of your ideas and use those in my own life. Because even I was talking to Chris. And it's just, I literally have 12 brands right now. I've got 5 or 6 different businesses.
Yeah.
And so I have all of these things that I'm trying to do at the same time. And what I find is I don't do any of them at the level that I could be doing.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's definitely, and the overwhelm part of it. Talk about what overwhelm is.
So overwhelm is where you feel like your list is unending. Your amount of items that you have to do is too much, right? Like I don't feel effective. I cannot execute, right? There's just too much there. Your decision making is worn down. That's how I would describe overwhelm, and it's just not a great place to be. Like your example there about having like 5 businesses, I struggle with that too, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, I'm working on building, a mobile game with my brothers and sisters, right? And now I'm working on this, and then I got another game that I was working on. So I struggle with that too, right? But it just kind of goes back to the prioritization, and the time boxing, right? What am I going to focus on today? Where am I going to allocate my time? Anything that falls below that line, you just got to kind of push it off and leave it on the back burner, right? It's not like it's gone. It's just not on the focus right now.
And do you do like long-term timeline, time boxing prioritization? Like you say, okay, well, these are the things I want to accomplish this week or this month or this, like in most businesses like this one, like this is Q1, this is quarter 2, this is, that kind of thing. Is that something that you kind of?
Yeah. So one of the things that, like when you talk about life as a process, right? That's really how I think about things, right? So you start off with your best life is kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, right? Yeah. Here's all the things that I want. Once you get down to your goals, the way that I built this out is you got to define your goal, right? And your goal should have a target date. This is when I think I can get it done.
Okay.
Personally, a lot of us suck at estimating on how long something's going to take, right?
Always takes longer than it.
Always
you think it's
longer.
going to.
Yeah. So you got to have kind of a target date on your goal, and I call it a target date rather than a due date because you don't want to beat yourself up if you don't make it, right? You can always move your target, but you want to try to hit that if you can. Then you can break things down into like milestones, which are like your landmarks. I'm a huge believer in strategy and breaking it down into those smaller pieces. So let's say, you had this idea of, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds, you know, definitive goal. I know exactly what it is. I want to lose 20 pounds within 6 months. So your milestones might be, you know, 5 pounds at a time. So I want to lose 5 pounds, you know, the first 3 weeks, 5 pounds the second 3 weeks, 5 pounds the third 3 weeks. Then your time boxes come in to define, hey, this is when I'm actually working out, right? So I'm going to have my plan 3 times this week, an hour a piece, you know, trying to do my workout routine to meet that goal. So I'm a huge believer in breaking it into pieces, manageable pieces, but the foundation of everything is just what are you doing at one given time?
Right.
Yeah.
And do you do that on a 24-hour basis? Like, how strict do you get? I mean, I guess it probably depends on the amount of list, right?
Well, it just depends on the person, right? I mean, you want your systems and processes to work for you, not against you. So if you're being a tyrant, you're miserable, obviously your schedule sucks. So I describe it as more of an outline, but usually for me, my day is planned out starting with that morning routine, right? I dedicate 45 minutes to that, and then breaking that into those 30 and 45 minute, maybe an hour time boxes all the way till about 5:30 maybe. And then I got nothing out there. So that's like my family time, my rest time. And then I have an evening routine as well, right? So they always tell you shut off your devices about an hour before bed.
Yeah.
Hour before bed, I'll do my journal. And what I usually do is text to speech, right? So I can actually talk to myself because nobody wants to sit there with the pad and, you know, write everything out. It gets kind of cumbersome. So hour before bed, that's kind of my trigger to start winding down. I'll do my journal, review my day, right? Did I check the boxes? That's so huge, right? You're always so focused on, you know, what am I going to do next?
Right.
Reflection is absolutely key to say, how did I do, right? And what can I learn from it, right? And picking up those lessons along the way. So yeah, hour before bed, you know, start calming everything down. And then usually about 10 minutes before bed, I'll shut off the TV and just kind of meditate for a few minutes before I actually go climb into bed and call it a day. But that reflection, right? How did I do? I think is so important too, because if you hit everything you wanted to, or it came reasonably close, you won the day. And that's the other thing that Day Master has is, did I win today? And then you can develop that win streak, like you said.
Celebrating the wins.
Celebrating the wins. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're so prone and geared towards beating ourselves up, I think, and not really seeing that. First of all, we made it through the day on some days, on some days, but really say, you know, and then part of it, and then you're looking into tomorrow, right? Trying to figure out what you're doing tomorrow and going through all of that. That's, so you're a small business owner, obviously, and a lot of the people that are listening to this would be a small business owner.
Yeah.
What are kind of the first steps that you would take? And when's Day Master coming out? Give me your target date.
My target date. All right. So we're probably about 2 or 3 weeks away, right? Just wrapping up some of the polish and testing. So 2 or 3 weeks away.
Is it beta now?
Yeah. Just some beta, just some testing, some polish there, just to get it working. And then what was the question again? Sorry.
I'm curious, like so the Day Master is almost done. So how would you describe how most small business owners would kind of use the software, but also just without the software? How do you plan? What's kind of the starting point for getting this productive life started?
Sure. So the product is really geared towards a person, right? When I talk about, you know, that holistic view, it's up to you to decide where you want to allocate your time. I think that's what it boils down to. But I think it's more looking at it from a holistic life perspective, right? So if you're a small business owner, I think it could be extremely valuable, right, to remain organized. I think it's a lot more difficult as a small business owner because you own your time, right? You get to decide, hey, I'm going to work on this or that or the other thing, versus if you're going to work at a job, your day is a lot more structured. You know, people are giving you stuff to do, et cetera. So I think for somebody that's owning their own small business, I think that's huge, right? Being able to set up your time and prioritize, reflect, those types of things are really, really important.
Yeah, to be able to walk through each little item. And I think predominantly, I think one of the things I carry away from this is kind of my own philosophy too, which is just you have to prioritize what's important in your life, you know, and because I always talk about, you know, if money is your goal, then you'll never have enough.
Yep.
You know, if like that's your primary goal, you're screwed. Because you're literally never going to get, because you always want that next thing. Like if I'm 5 figures now, I want to be 6. And if I'm 6, I want to be 7, you know, all of that kind of thing. So I think making sure having those priorities was, so have you always been into fitness and health and that kind of thing? I'm big on fitness. One of my degrees is actually in exercise physiology, and I was a trainer and all that. So I've always, in this industry that we deal with a lot, you know, whether it's automotive or detailing or any small business, really, it's that health and fitness component.
Yeah.
What have you done to kind of create and maintain a healthy lifestyle? Because I think that's really important, and I think something that a lot of people are missing.
Oh, absolutely. So I will say it goes back to your priorities once again, right? I think your physical health is really the foundation of everything. If you're in poor health, the rest of your life is going to suffer. Where if one of these other categories, like, you know, your relationship is suffering, maybe, you know, that's going to bleed a little bit into the rest of your life. But if you don't feel good, if you don't have good energy, you're not going to be executing very well. So I think fitness is huge. And you can break it down into different pieces, right? So something as simple as just drinking a lot of water.
Yeah.
You know, like that's something anybody can do.
Yeah.
You know, there's no real barrier to entry. So small things like that can make a world of difference in your life. But for me personally, you know, my business is my primary focus right now. So I'm trying to like just maintain. So I'm a big believer in like micro workouts is how I'd call them.
Okay.
You know, you don't need this huge, elaborate, you know, I need to go dedicate an hour and a half at the gym, pounding out the weights and whatever else. For example, just yesterday, right? 40 push-ups, 20 pull-ups, and then, you know, I'm good. 15 minutes. It does not have to be anything crazy, you know, just knock it out and listen to your body, right? Yeah. If you're feeling beat up and tired, and then you're going to try to grind out a workout on top of that, there might be some cost associated with it. So know what you need and take action and make sure it's just following your priority list.
And you eat pretty healthy, I assume, in general. It's hard. Like, I mean, with me, it's the same.
In general, I do, right? So, but I'm definitely not perfect. You know? So I love the sweets. I got a sweet tooth occasionally, but
my wife's a baker. So like that I always call it my inner fat kid. Like she literally locks up. She has this, we have a freezer that she locks stuff up because my inner fat kid gets hungry at 2 a.m. So I will go, if it's available, I will definitely go find it. Yeah. Tim Ferriss has, I don't know if you've seen, so he's the 4-hour work week guy. Okay. Tim Ferriss, and which is a lot of different strategies, but he did this book called The 4-Hour Body. Okay. And like he talks about, you know, he's at dinner and he'll go into the bathroom and do 50 air squats. And like that's his, you know, so like it's an efficiency based workout system. Doesn't work for me, but you know, if it would, I think your point is that just do something. Yeah. Right. Just get those 3 to 4. I'm a 6 to 7 day, you know, a week guy, just because that's like my stress management. Sure. I start it. You read through my morning routine. It's the first thing I do every morning is just some basic cardio, and I lift in the afternoons, which kind of breaks up. Yeah. That's part of how I break up my day and my world. Yeah. But it doesn't take that. You don't, you know, just. I just say get off your ass and go do something.
Exactly. Right. I mean, it doesn't have to be. Yeah. Like I said, this mountainous activity. It can be 15 minutes of walking. I will say the one thing you can multitask on is if you're on a treadmill and you got a TV. And
I talk about that. Yeah,
you can multitask there. Yeah. But
I read a contract for Melissa this morning while I was on the treadmill at 5:20 or whatever time it was. Yeah,
sure. So that is one place where you can multitask. But do what works for you. The other thing that I think is really important is stretching.
Oh yeah.
Stretching releases all sorts of good endorphins. It keeps you loose. And that's something I typically do, once again, like 3 or 4 times a week, usually after a run or whatever, too, adding that in there. That is the huge thing.
So now I have to wonder whether you're going to start doing the cold plunge after reading my stuff.
I read that. I read it. So what I do, I do the cold end of the shower. Okay. Right? So it's not exactly the same. But
I hate the cold shower. I like the plunge better because it's less painful for some reason.
Well, I don't have a cold tub that I can jump into real easily. Yeah. That's like my happy medium.
We ended up throwing, we have a tub and we're on well water, so we're lucky because and we're in Montana, so it comes out at 50 degrees. Oh, so the water, so it's 50 is about what I try to do, and it's crazy because it's a huge difference between like 51 to 55, like that. You wouldn't think that's that big a deal, but it's crazy. But yeah, cold shower, definitely, if that's to finish up your shower that way.
It's an easy
especially
way.
if you let it fall over the vagus nerve, get it on the back of your neck and do it for a couple minutes or whatever, yeah.
If you're a thinker too, I found that helps, like just getting that cold water out your head, just try to slow things down for a little bit. That's huge. So
it's, I'm traveling this week and I miss it. Like I can tell that I haven't done it.
Yeah.
Because the energy levels and all of that. It was crazy because I did this, I do a sauna first, then later I do the cold plunge, and I was showing the temperature differences. I posted on Instagram. So my temperature after being in the sauna for a half an hour, my body temperature was not 78, that would be dead.
yeah, that wouldn't be
97.8.
Okay.
So it had gone down from the heat therapy, and then when I got out of the cold plunge, it was 98.7 or 98.9. So it went back the other direction.
Yeah.
Which shows the metabolic effect of doing cold therapy.
Yeah.
Because it kind of fires that all up and gets your energy level going.
Well, that's one of the huge things too. I remember taking that like exercise physiology class in college, right? And that had so much good information, right? Compression and ice and heat, right? You always want to do ice if you're hurt, right? For the first 48 hours, and then you can switch to that ice-heat combination, always ending with ice. That's a great way to manage injuries. But yeah, that cold shock, that will wake you up. That gets you feeling good.
Yeah, they and I adapted. I grabbed this off of Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan says it reminds him every day to stop being a little bitch.
yeah, that's another great reason to do it.
Because it's one of those things that it literally sucks every time you do it. Like it's kind of like, if you've ever done the Airdyne attack bike, with the arms and legs, the fan bikes. It's the same thing. I can be as fit as possible, and it still sucks. Like it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how many times, the assault bike. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many times you do it. It still sucks every time. So, and I think that's important. There are certain things in your life that you can do that aren't have-tos. Like you don't have to do them, but there are ways to prove that you can face even minor, small adversities.
Oh, absolutely.
And still survive.
Yeah, I mean, like, and especially as most days go on, you could probably relate to this, right? Like, you start off with that morning routine, huge believer in momentum, right? The morning routine gets your day set, and if you've already kind of set out the 3 or 4 or 5 things, or have time boxes where you have, like, your day kind of laid out in front of you, I mean, you could hit the ground running, you know what I mean? And I'm similar, right, where it's like, I'm going to go after it. Like, I don't have, I have one speed, and that's fast, and I have to pump the brakes to get myself to slow down. But as you reach the end of the day, usually I can feel the mental burn at that point, where, like, hey, my decision making is not as good. I'm feeling it.
Gotta go back to your list.
List. So, but yeah, just being able to execute, and then planning that rest time is huge. So,
and how does this implement? How does that work with having a family? Obviously, if you're a single person, or you don't have any other influence, personal influences in your life with your time, how do you implement it with a family? Like, how does that work?
So, great question. For me, there's a couple things I like to keep on my calendar. One is that family dinner time, right? Being able to plan for that at least 2 times a week, right? Where we can all sit down as a family. I know that's something that's really disappeared for most people.
Oh, absolutely.
The easy thing to always do is, I'm going to grab my dish and I'm going to go sit in front of the TV, and, we can kind of sit together, but we're not really, joining and then conversating and connecting. So having time for family dinner a couple times a week is huge. And then for me, like Saturday, I always try to do something fun with my kids, right? Make the time for them. Technology is a huge distraction, especially for the kids now. So one of the things I like to do is just go out on the nature trails.
Oh, okay.
Take the dog, just relax. But finding that time, dedicating that time for your family is so important.
Day nights?
Huh? Oh, date nights too, right? So I tried to make a deal with my wife, and it's like, hey, we'll take turns planning, right? So just getting a system like that. I'll take one week, you take the next week, or you're in charge of planning the next one. So you're kind of working together. It's not falling on just one person. So.
Yeah, I've been married for 28 years. And so like it's that date night, that kind of deliberate prioritization and all of that becomes so
it's
important.
Huge. Yeah.
For sure. Well, anything else you have to add, get these guys going, or just inspire, or anything? It's been really interesting. We obviously, for me, I'm such an efficiency, productivity guy that I think this is great.
Well, just to, lay it out again, prioritize, know what you want, right? I mean, be able to describe all the different things that you want. I read on your website too, right? I want to be able to give back. Charity, being able to give your time and other things like that is so important. But figure out what you want and writing it down. That's the other absolutely key thing that I've found through my whole experiment and experience is writing things down is probably the most important thing that you can do. Whether it's what you want, right? When you're trying to describe all these different things that you want in your life, it'll help you clarify. It'll help you kind of work through it, right? Because once you have it written down, you can change it, you can modify it. But it also goes for like your values, right? Like being able to describe what your values are, what your mission is, what your rules are, what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Being able to, reflect, right? That's where I said I think journaling is absolutely huge because you can actually learn lessons from your own self. It gives you that perspective. Yeah. So
I love the text and the talk to text idea because if it's, some people are journal, hardcover kind of stuff. Some people are notepad. Some people are in their phone, whatever, right?
Yeah, and do what works for you. I think that's the other key thing, right? A huge thing on TikTok was like this 5 to 9 before the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, I'm doing this 4 hours of stuff before my day even gets going. If you're doing it and it sucks and it's not working for you, don't do it. Right.
Yeah.
Do what works for you, but also make sure that you're getting organized. You're allocating the time to where you need to allocate it. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest takeaway. Write it down, define what you want, and then execute and plan, right? And then reflect. How am I doing? Replan.
Yeah.
Do it all over again.
There's this old joke, doctor, it hurts when I do this. And the doctor says, stop doing that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thanks, Alex. I appreciate this. This has been super interesting. And website, where we find any information on you, find you on social or whatever.
So you can find me at daymaster.net, and then I got a Facebook page, and then I'm getting rolling on social media. Now, one thing I'll tell you real quick with social media,
Go ahead.
It's absolutely critical for your business, but at the same time, it can be a black hole, right? It can be the
soul-sucking,
ultimate time suck, right? There's no end. There's no end to social media. That is built that way. So for me, I'm not huge on social media. I'm kind of dipping my toe in the water, but it kind of goes against all the stuff that I'm talking about,
You can jump on it. There's a program that Ellery actually showed me, which I wish I had had years ago, called Agora Pulse.
Okay.
And it literally lets you schedule all your social media posts, but you don't actually have to go.
Oh, okay. I got to look into that.
Yeah. So
thank you.
So yeah, if you're a business person, there's Hootsuite, there's several of them. So if you're a business owner or personal, but if you do it for business, you can actually stay off of social media and still post to social media.
That's huge.
With you guys for sure.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a good talk.
All right, have a good day.
Get your one-stop success solution at detailersroadmap.com today.